The stars were going out. Commander Zelkira watched the display screen with growing fear. Another star system had vanished from the galactic map. The red dot that marked the Helix Prime system simply disappeared, leaving empty black space where millions of beings had lived just days before. How many does that make? She asked her aide, though she already knew the answer would make her sick. 17 systems in the past month, Commander, replied Nixtao, his crystal body dimming with sorrow. The Devourers are moving faster now. Zelkira closed her 4 eyes and tried to think. As the leader of the Galactic Coalition's defense forces, she had seen many terrible things. Wars between species, planets destroyed by natural disasters, entire civilizations wiped out by disease. But nothing compared to this. The Devourers had appeared from the dark space between galaxies 3 years ago. At first, the Coalition thought they were just another hostile alien race. The galaxy had dealt with those before. But these creatures were different. They did not want to conquer worlds or steal resources. They wanted to destroy everything. The Devourers consumed matter itself, turning planets, stars, and living beings into pure dark energy. They left nothing behind except empty space and silence. No survivors ever escaped to tell what happened. The Coalition only knew about the attacks because their long-range sensors could detect the moment when entire star systems simply stopped existing. Commander, we have reports from the front lines, said Captain Vex 9, one of the collectives. Drone representatives. The insect-like being spoke with the shared voice of billions of his kind. Our fleets at the Outer Rim have engaged the enemy. Zelkira opened her eyes. What happened? Total defeat. 300 ships lost. No damage to enemy forces detected. The news hit the command center like a physical blow. Everyone present knew what this meant. The Coalition's most powerful weapons could not even scratch the Devourer's holes. Their energy shields absorbed every attack and somehow grew stronger from the bombardment. How is that possible? Whispered Dr. Lamori, the chief scientist. Her light-based form flickered with confusion. Our quantum torpedoes should have disrupted their molecular structure. The Devourers do not follow our laws of physics, Captain. Vex 9 replied. They exist partially outside normal space-time. Our weapons pass through them like they are firing at shadows. Zelkira stood up from her command chair and walked to the main display. The galactic map showed the Devourers' path of destruction. They moved in a straight line toward the galaxy's center, consuming everything in their way. At their current speed, they would reach the core worlds within 6 months. Options? She asked her staff. We could evacuate the remaining outer colonies, suggested Nixtao. Save as many lives as possible before the enemy arrives. And go where? Zelkira asked. They will consume the entire galaxy eventually. There is nowhere to run. We could try a diplomatic mission, offered Dr. Lamori. Perhaps they can be reasoned with. Captain Vex 9's form buzzed with what passed for laughter among his kind. The collective has tried to communicate with them thousands of times. They do not respond to any language, mathematical concept, or universal symbol. They are not interested in talking. Then we fight until the end, Zelkira said firmly. We are the Coalition. We have survived ice ages, galactic wars, and collapse of ancient empires. We will not surrender to these creatures. But even as she spoke the words, Zelkira felt doubt creeping into her hearts. The Coalition represented 47 different species and controlled over 10,000 inhabited worlds. They had technology that could move faster than light, bend space itself, and create energy from nothing. Yet none of it mattered against an enemy that existed beyond the normal rules of reality. Commander, said a new voice from the communication station, we are receiving a priority message from the Yevon. Science Council. Put it through. The holographic image of High Counselor Tech Mana appeared in the center of the room. The ancient being's tentacles moved slowly, a sign of great weariness. Commander Zelkira, I bring grave news. Our greatest minds have completed their analysis of the Devourer threat. The conclusion is ... troubling. Speak plainly, Counselor. The Devourers are not just consuming matter and energy. They are consuming the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Each system they destroy makes them stronger and weakens the fabric of space-time around them. If they reach the galactic core, they will have enough power to unravel the entire universe. Silence fell over the command center. The implications were too terrible to fully understand. This was not just about saving their galaxy anymore. This was about preventing the destruction of everything that existed. Is there anything we can do? Zelkira asked quietly. High Counselor Tekmana's image flickered. The Science Council has one final proposal. It is desperate and likely futile, but it represents our last hope. What is it? We send a distress signal to every corner of the galaxy. Every inhabited system, every space station, every exploration vessel. We ask for help from any civilization that might have knowledge or technology we have overlooked. Zelkira felt her spirits sink. Counselor, with respect, we represent the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. If we cannot stop the Devourers, what makes you think some primitive species could help? Because, the Counselor replied, advanced does not always mean better. Sometimes the most sophisticated solution is not the right one. Perhaps a civilization that thinks differently, that has not followed our path of development, might see something we have missed. It was a thin hope, barely worthy of the name, but it was the only hope they had left. Very well, Zelkira said. Prepare the signal. Send it to every known inhabited system. Include all our data on the Devourers and a complete tactical analysis. If there is anyone out there who can help us, they deserve to know what we are facing. As her staff began working on the transmission, Zelkira looked once more at the galactic map. The dark spots where star systems used to exist seemed to mock her efforts. The Coalition had built a civilization based on logic, efficiency, and the careful application of scientific principles. They had eliminated war, poverty, and disease from most of their worlds. They had thought themselves the masters of the galaxy. Now they were learning that there were forces in the universe that did not care about logic or science. Forces that could not be reasoned with, bargained with, or understood. Forces that wanted nothing except the end of everything. The distress signal would go out within the hour. It would travel to thousands of worlds, reaching civilizations both great and small. Most would not be able to help. Many would not even understand the message. But perhaps, somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone would receive their plea and find a way to answer it. Zelkira did not believe this would happen. In her long life, she had learned that the universe was cold and uncaring. Help did not come from the stars when you needed it most. But she would send the signal anyway, because giving up was not in her nature. She just hoped that somewhere out there, someone else felt the same way. The signal from the dying galaxy reached Earth on a Tuesday. Dr. Sarah Chun was working late in the SETI laboratory when the computers started going crazy. Every dish in the array was picking up the same transmission coming from the direction of the galactic center. The signal was so strong it overloaded their equipment and sent warning lights flashing across every monitor. What the hell is happening? She muttered, running from console to console. The other researchers had gone home hours ago, leaving her alone with the machines that listened to the stars. The signal was unlike anything they had ever detected. It contained more information than Earth's entire internet, compressed into mathematical patterns that somehow translated themselves into perfect English. As Sarah watched, The message began appearing on her screens, line by line. To any civilization receiving this transmission, the galaxy is dying. We are the Galactic Coalition, representing 47 species across 10,000 worlds. An enemy, called the Devourers, is consuming our star systems one by one. They cannot be stopped by any weapon or technology we possess. In 6 months, they will reach the galactic core and destroy the universe itself. We are sending you all our scientific data in the hope that someone somewhere might find a solution we have missed. This is our final message. If you are listening, please help us. Sarah stared at the screen for a long time. Her first thought was that this had to be some kind of joke or hoax. Aliens asking for help? Creatures that could destroy star systems? It sounded like something from a bad science fiction movie. But the technical data that followed the message was real. Mathematical proofs that would take Earth's best scientists years to understand. Star charts showing the positions of thousands of inhabited worlds. Video recordings of the Devourers in action, turning entire planets into dark energy with a touch. Sarah called her supervisor, then the director of the facility, then the Secretary of Defense. Within hours, the world's governments were in emergency session. The United Nations held a special assembly. Every major scientist on Earth was shown the alien message and asked for their opinion. The consensus was terrifying. The transmission was real. This changes everything, said Dr. James Park, Earth's leading physicist, during a televised address to the world. We are not alone in the universe, but we are also not safe. If these Devourers succeed in destroying the galactic core, the effects will eventually reach us here. We are talking about the end of reality itself. Panic spread across Earth. Some people demanded that humanity hide, hoping the aliens would forget about their small planet. Others wanted to flee to distant star systems, as if running away could save them from an enemy that consumed galaxies. But a third group had a different idea. We have to help them, said General Maria Santos during a meeting of world leaders. These aliens are fighting for their lives, just like we would in their place. If we do nothing, we all die anyway when the universe ends. Our only chance is to stand with them. What can we possibly do? Ask the President of the United States. They have technology thousands of years ahead of ours. They can travel faster than light and build weapons we can't even imagine. If they can't stop these Devourers, how could we? I don't know, General, Santos admitted, but we have something they might not have. What's that? The will to fight when everything looks hopeless. The debate continued for days. Scientists analyzed the alien data, looking for weaknesses in the Devourers that the Coalition might have missed. Military leaders studied the tactical reports, searching for new strategies. Engineers worked around the clock to upgrade Earth's primitive spacecraft for interstellar travel. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Professor Ellen Wright was a historian, not a scientist. She had been brought in to study the cultural data the aliens had included with their message. While others focused on technology and tactics, she looked at how the Coalition's civilizations had developed over thousands of years. I think I see the problem, she announced during a briefing with world leaders. These alien species have become too advanced for their own good. What do you mean? Asked the British Prime Minister. Look at their history. Every single Coalition species went through the same pattern. First, they developed technology to solve their problems. Then they used logic and science to eliminate conflict, suffering, and uncertainty from their lives. They created perfect societies where everything runs smoothly and efficiently. That sounds like a good thing, said the Japanese emperor. Maybe, Professor Wright replied, but it also made them weak. They've forgotten how to fight against impossible odds. They've eliminated the very qualities that make life worth living: hope, courage, the refusal to give up when logic says you should. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we give them something they've lost. Not better technology or smarter tactics, but the reminder that some battles are worth fighting even when you can't win. The world leaders looked at each other with confusion and doubt. How could primitive human emotions help against an enemy that could destroy star systems? But General Santos understood. You're talking about morale, about fighting spirit. I'm talking about humanity, Professor Wright said. About the thing that makes us get back up when we're knocked down. About the stubborn refusal to accept. Defeat that got us through ice ages, world wars, and every other disaster in our history. It was a crazy idea. But with only months left before the Devourers reached the galactic core, crazy was all they had. Earth's response began with a single ship. The vessel was crude compared to Coalition technology, built from spare parts and powered by nuclear engines. That had been obsolete for decades. It could barely reach 1/10 the speed of light, making it pathetically slow by galactic standards. But the ship carried something unique. A crew of human volunteers who had refused to accept that the battle was already lost. Captain John Mitchell was a former Marine who had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan. His crew included engineers who had worked on impossible projects, doctors who had saved lives when everyone said it was too late, and teachers who had never given up on difficult students. They were not the smartest or strongest people on Earth, but they were the ones who understood that sometimes trying was more important than succeeding. When their ship reached the first Coalition outpost, the aliens could not believe what they were seeing. The humans had traveled for months in a vessel that should have broken apart under the stress. They had no advanced weapons, no energy shields, no technology that could help in the coming battle. But they had something else. "We're here to help," Captain Mitchell told the shocked Zephyrian commander. "We know we're not much to look at, but we've come to fight alongside you." The Zephyrian's crystal body flickered with confusion. "You cannot help us, small beings. Your weapons are primitive, and your ship is barely spaceworthy. You will only die uselessly." "Maybe," Mitchell replied, "but we're going to die anyway. If those Devourers win, so we might as well die fighting." It was such a simple statement, but it hit the alien commander like a physical blow. When had anyone in the Coalition last spoken with such certainty about choosing death over surrender? When had any of them shown such willingness to fight against impossible odds? More human ships began arriving at Coalition outposts across the galaxy. Each one carried the same message. Earth was here to help, no matter how hopeless the situation looked. The aliens did not understand it at first. These primitive creatures had no chance of survival against the Devourers. Their presence would not change the outcome of the war. So why had they come? But as humans began working alongside Coalition forces, something strange started happening. The aliens found themselves fighting harder, thinking clearer, and refusing to give up when they would have retreated before. It was as if the simple presence of beings who believed in victory made victory seem possible again. Dr. Lum Ori, the Coalition's chief scientist, studied this phenomenon with growing amazement. "The humans are not just fighting," she reported to the Science Council. "They are changing us. Somehow, their emotional state is affecting our performance in battle." "That is impossible," replied High Counselor Tekmana. "Emotions are chemical reactions in biological brains. They cannot influence reality." But the evidence was clear. Wherever human forces joined Coalition fleets, the impossible began happening. Weapons that had failed for months suddenly worked perfectly. Tactical situations that looked hopeless turned in their favor at the last moment. It was as if the universe itself was responding to humanity's refusal to accept defeat. The humans called it fighting spirit. The Coalition had no word for it in any of their languages. They were about to learn that fighting spirit was more than just an emotion. It was a force of nature that could reshape reality itself. The first miracle happened during the Battle of Kepler Station. Commander Zelkira watched in disbelief as a human fighter pilot named Jake Morrison did something that should have been impossible. His tiny ship, no bigger than a coalition shuttle, was diving straight toward a devourer vessel the size of a moon. The enemy's dark energy weapons reached out like hungry tentacles, but somehow they kept missing. "How is he avoiding those shots?" she asked her tactical officer. "He isn't, Commander," Nixtau replied, his crystal body pulsing with confusion. "The enemy weapons are hitting his ship. They're just not doing any damage." Zelkira stared at the display screen. She could see the dark energy beams striking Morrison's fighter again and again. By all the laws of physics, his ship should have been turned into vapor within seconds. Instead, it kept flying forward, weaving between enemy fire like it was dancing. "This is Morrison to all ships," came the pilot's voice over the communication channel. His tone was calm and confident, as if he was discussing the weather instead of flying into certain death. "I'm going to ram this ugly thing right in what looks like its engine core. Cover me while I line up the shot." "Morrison, you can't survive that attack run," Zelkira called back. "The energy output from that vessel would destroy a battle cruiser." "Maybe," Morrison replied, "but I didn't come all this way to fly home with my tail between my legs." "See you on the other side, Commander." Zelkira watched helplessly as the human pilot accelerated toward the devourer ship. Every instinct told her to order a retreat. The mission was impossible. The pilot was going to die for nothing. But something about Morrison's voice made her hesitate. The human fighter slammed into the devourer vessel at full speed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire enemy ship began to shake and crack. Dark energy leaked from its hull like blood from a wound. Within minutes, the massive vessel broke apart and dissolved into nothing. Did he just destroy a devourer ship by crashing into it? Asked Nixtau. "Impossible," Zelkira whispered. "Our strongest weapons can't even scratch their hulls." But the evidence was right there on the screen. A single human pilot in a primitive fighter had accomplished what entire coalition fleets could not. Somehow, Morrison's willingness to sacrifice himself had turned his ship into a weapon that could hurt the devourers. The strangest part was that Morrison had survived. His ship was gone, but his life pod was picked up by a coalition rescue vessel. When they brought him aboard, he was grinning like he had just won a game instead of nearly dying in a suicide attack. "How did you do that?" Zelkira asked him when they met in the medical bay. Morrison shrugged. "I figured those things feed on fear and hopelessness, right? So I gave them the opposite. I flew at them with everything I had, believing with every fiber of my being that I could hurt them. Turns out I was right. It was the first time in 3 years that anyone had damaged a devourer vessel. News of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Suddenly, coalition forces that had been retreating for months began to stand and fight. They had seen proof that the enemy could be beaten. But Morrison's attack was just the beginning. The real transformation started when humans began working directly with coalition forces. Captain Shun, who had originally received the distress signal, was assigned to work with a Zephyrian battle group. The crystal beings had not sung their war songs in decades, believing that such primitive displays were beneath their advanced civilization. "Why don't you sing anymore?" Chun asked their leader, Songmaster Kyle Vera, during a strategy meeting. "We have evolved beyond such crude expressions," Kyle Vera replied, her crystal form dim and colorless. "Music is inefficient. It serves no tactical purpose." "Maybe efficiency isn't everything," Sean suggested. "My grandmother used to say that music was the language of the soul. Maybe your songs aren't just noise. Maybe they're a way to tell the universe who you really are." Kyle Vera seemed confused by this idea. "The universe does not listen to songs." "Are you sure about that?" The question haunted the songmaster for days. She watched the humans in action, saw how they sang and laughed, even in the face of death. They treated their emotions as tools, weapons that could be sharpened and aimed at their enemies. During the next battle, as Devourer ships closed in on their position, Shun began singing an old Earth song called "We Shall Overcome." Her voice was not particularly good, but it carried something that the Coalition had forgotten: defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. One by one, other humans joined in. Then, to everyone's surprise, Kyle Vera began to hum along. The sound that came from her crystal body was like nothing anyone had ever heard, a pure tone that seemed to resonate with the fabric of space itself. "I remember," Kyle Vera whispered as her body began to glow with brilliant light. "I remember what it felt like to sing with purpose." The songmaster's voice rose in an ancient Cepharian battle hymn, and something incredible happened. The energy shields around the Coalition ships began to strengthen and shine brighter. Weapons that had been failing suddenly worked with perfect accuracy. It was as if the music itself was bending reality to match their will to survive, that the same thing was happening across the galaxy. Human Marines fought alongside collective drones, showing them that individual choice could be more powerful than hive mind efficiency. For the first time in their history, collective units began making independent decisions, breaking formation to save wounded comrades or attempt desperate flanking maneuvers. "The humans are teaching us to be ourselves again," reported Captain Vex 9 to the collective command. "We had forgotten that we were individuals before we were part of the hive." The Luminari, beings of pure energy who had spent centuries perfecting emotional control, found themselves burning brighter than ever when they fought alongside human forces. Dr. Lum Ori, who had always prided herself on logical thinking, discovered that sometimes passion was more effective than calculation. "I do not understand what is happening to us," she told her research team. "Every scientific principle suggests that emotional decision-making should be inferior to logical analysis. Yet when we fight with feeling instead of pure reason, we perform better in every measurable way." Her assistant, a young luminary named Brightstar, offered an explanation. "Perhaps logic and emotion are not opposites, Doctor. Perhaps they are two parts of the same thing. The humans seem to use both together, like two hands working toward the same goal." Dr. Lum Ori considered this. "You think our mistake was trying to choose between them?" "I think our mistake was believing that perfection meant eliminating the parts of ourselves that made us messy and unpredictable. But maybe those are the parts that make us alive." As the weeks passed, the change in Coalition forces became impossible to ignore. Ships that had been losing every battle for months suddenly began winning. Tactics that should have failed worked perfectly. It was as if the presence of humanity was awakening something that had been sleeping in every species across the galaxy. The humans called it fighting spirit, but the Coalition scientists had a different name for it. They called it hope. Hope was not just an emotion, they realized. It was a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. It was the force that made life choose to exist instead of surrendering to entropy. It was the power that turned impossible odds into unexpected victories. The Devourers, creatures that fed on despair and the collapse of ordered systems, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that grew stronger the more hopeless the situation became. But the real test was yet to come. Intelligence reports indicated that the Devourers were massing their forces for a final assault on the galactic core. If they succeeded in consuming the central black hole, they would have enough power to unravel the fabric of space-time itself. The Coalition was preparing for the last battle, and for the first time in 3 years, they believed they might actually win. Commander Zelkira stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as human and alien ships formed up for the attack. The fleet that assembled was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. not just ships and weapons, but the combined will of dozens of species who had remembered what it meant to fight for something worth saving. "All ships report ready, Commander," announced Nix Tao, his crystal body glowing with newfound purpose. "Then let's show these devourers what happens when the galaxy refuses to give up." Zelkira replied. She had learned something important from the humans. Sometimes the best strategy was simply to believe that victory was possible, and then fight like your belief could make it real. As it turned out, that was exactly what was needed. The final battle began at the heart of the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the most terrifying sight anyone had ever seen. The Devourers had built a massive structure around the central black hole, a web of dark metal and twisted energy that stretched for millions of kilometers. Through this device, they were slowly draining the black hole's power, converting it into the dark energy they needed to tear apart reality itself. "How long do we have?" Chun asked her science officer. 6 hours, Admiral," replied Dr. Kim Park, his face pale with fear. "If they complete the conversion process, the resulting explosion will create a cascade effect that destroys the universe." Chun nodded grimly. Around her ship, the largest fleet in galactic history was taking position. Every species in the coalition had sent their remaining vessels. Humans flew alongside Zephyrians, collective drones worked with luminary energy beings, and dozens of other alien races prepared to make their final stand. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun," she announced over the fleet communication channel. "Today we fight for more than just our galaxy. We fight for the right of life to exist anywhere in the universe. Some of you may think this battle is impossible to win. You're probably right. But we're going to fight anyway, because that's what living beings do when everything they care about is threatened." The response came from thousands of ships in dozens of languages, but the message was the same. They were ready to fight. The Devourer Defense Fleet was waiting for them. Massive ships that looked like they were made from crystallized shadow moved to intercept the coalition forces. These vessels were larger and more powerful than anything the Devourers had used before, grown fat on the energy of consumed star systems. "All ships, attack formation," Sean ordered. "Remember what we've learned. Don't just fight with your weapons. Fight with everything you are." The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Coalition ships charged into the enemy formation with a fury that surprised even themselves. Zephyrian crystal singers filled space with music that made their energy weapons burn brighter. Collective drones performed individual acts of heroism that would have been impossible under hive mind control. Luminary beings blazed with light so intense it hurt to look at them, but the Devourers were too strong. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 coalition vessels were lost. The dark energy weapons of the Devourers tore through shields and armor like they were made of paper. Even with their newfound fighting spirit, the Allied forces were being pushed back. "Admiral, we're losing too many ships," reported Captain Morrison, the pilot who had first proven the Devourers could be hurt. "At this rate, we won't have enough left to breach their defenses." Sean watched the tactical display with growing desperation. The human part of the fleet was doing better than expected, but they were still hopelessly outnumbered. The Devour facility continued its work, draining energy from the black hole and converting it into the power needed to end everything. That was when she made the decision that changed everything. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Chun. I'm ordering an emergency landing." "Landing where, Admiral?" Morrison asked in confusion. "On the facility itself. We're going to take this fight to the ground." The suggestion was met with stunned silence. Landing on an enemy installation while under fire was insane enough. Landing on a structure built around a black hole was suicide. "Admiral," said Commander Zelkira from her Zephyrian battlecruiser, "that maneuver is impossible." The gravitational forces alone would crush your ships. Maybe, Chun replied. But we've been doing impossible things for months now. Why stop now? She switched to the fleet-wide channel. All ships, you heard the order, were going in hard and fast. Use the facility's own structure as cover and set down wherever you can find a flat surface. Once we're on the ground, we fight. Room by room, corridor by corridor, until we reach the core. And then what? Asked Dr. Park. Then we figure out how to shut this thing down before it ends the universe. The human ships broke off from the main battle and dove toward the Devourer facility. It was a terrifying sight. Hundreds of vessels, plunging through fields of dark energy and twisted gravity, aiming for landing spots on a structure that defied every law of physics. Many ships didn't make it. The facility's defenses and the impossible gravitational forces destroyed dozens of vessels before they could land. But enough survived to establish a foothold on the station's outer shell. Chun's own ship came down hard on what looked like a landing platform, its hull cracked and smoking from the descent. All around her, other human vessels were setting down wherever they could find space, their crews already preparing for ground combat. All teams, report status, Chun ordered as she checked her sidearm and combat armor. Landing successful, came Morrison's voice. My team is setting up a perimeter around the engine section. Engineering team down and operational, reported Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez. We're already working on the power distribution grid. Medical team establishing field hospital, added Dr. Amanda Foster. We're ready to treat wounded from all species. What happened next surprised even the humans. Instead of staying safely in space, Coalition ships began following their example. Zephyrian vessels touched down with their crystal hulls ringing like bells. Collective drones deployed in perfect formation despite the chaos around them. Luminary beings descended like falling stars, their energy forms adapting to solid matter for the first time in centuries. This is madness, muttered Commander Zelkira as her own ship settled onto the facility's surface. We are trained for space combat, not ground warfare. Then we learn, replied Songmaster Kyle Vera, her crystal body already changing shape to adapt to the new environment. The humans have shown us that adaptation is more important than preparation. The ground battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human soldiers fought alongside aliens who had never set foot on a solid surface, showing them how to move and fight in environments they had never imagined. Coalition forces that had spent centuries perfecting space tactics learned to fight in narrow corridors and confined spaces. Keep moving, Chun shouted as she led a mixed team of humans and aliens through a passage that seemed to be made from solidified darkness. The longer we stay in one place, the more time the facility has to adapt to our presence. The Devourers had not expected a ground assault. Their defenses were designed to stop ships, not individual soldiers. But they adapted quickly, sending waves of creatures that looked like living shadow to stop the invasion. The fighting was brutal and desperate. In the twisted gravity of the facility, up and down had no meaning. Soldiers found themselves fighting on walls and ceilings, learning to battle in 3 dimensions while the universe itself seemed to be breaking down around them. But something amazing was happening. Every time a human soldier refused to give up, their alien comrades found new strength. When a Zephyrian warrior was wounded, a human medic would risk everything to save them, inspiring other coalition forces to attempt their own impossible rescues. I do not understand, said Captain Vex 9 as he watched a human engineer named Sarah Kim risk her life to repair a damaged collective drone. She gains nothing from saving me. Her logical action would be to continue the mission. That's where you're wrong, Kim replied as she worked to restore his systems. I gain everything from saving you, because we're not just individual fighters anymore. we're a team. The concept of teamwork was foreign to many coalition species. They had cooperation and coordination, but not the deep emotional bond that made humans willing to die for each other. Now they were learning that this bond could extend beyond their own species. Dr. Lum Ori found herself fighting alongside Chief Rodriguez, their different energy patterns somehow synchronizing to create more powerful attacks. Songmaster Kale Vera discovered that her crystal songs could amplify human battle cries, turning simple shouts into weapons that disrupted devourer defenses. "We are becoming something new," Kyle Vera reported to the Coalition Command. "Not just multiple species working together, but a single force united by shared purpose." As the ground teams fought their way deeper into the facility, the space battle above continued to rage. But something had changed. The Coalition fleet was no longer retreating. Inspired by the courage of the landing parties, they pressed their attack with renewed vigor. "The humans have given us a gift," announced High Counselor Tech Mana from his command ship. "They have shown us that victory is not about having the best weapons or the smartest tactics. It is about refusing to accept defeat." Hour by hour, the ground teams pushed deeper into the facility. They faced traps that warped space-time, weapons that fired pure entropy, and guardians that existed partially outside normal reality. But they kept moving forward, driven by the knowledge that failure meant the end of everything. Finally, after 6 hours of desperate fighting, Admiral Chun's team reached the facility's core. Before them stretched a chamber the size of a planet, filled with machinery that hurt to look at directly. At the center, a pillar of pure dark energy stretched down into the black hole itself, drawing power from the very heart of the galaxy. "This is it," Chun said, looking at the impossible device. "This is what we came to stop." Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the massive core of the Devourer facility, her mind racing as she tried to understand what she was seeing. The device was not just machinery, it was alive, a creature of pure dark energy that fed on the destruction of ordered systems. Every time it consumed a star or planet, it grew stronger and more complex. "It's beautiful in a terrible way," whispered Dr. Park, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend the alien technology. "Beautiful like a black hole is beautiful," Chun replied. "Deadly and inevitable, unless you find a way to change its nature." Around them, the mixed team of humans and aliens prepared for what they assumed would be their final battle. They had fought through impossible odds to reach this place, but now they faced something that seemed beyond their ability to defeat. The dark energy core pulsed with the power of 1,000 consumed worlds, drawing more energy from the black hole with each passing moment. "Admiral," said Captain Morrison, checking his weapon one last time, "whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. The readings show the thing is almost ready for its final conversion cycle." Chun nodded, but she did not reach for her own weapon. Instead, she stepped closer to the pulsing core of dark energy, her mind working on a problem that had nothing to do with destruction. "What if we've been thinking about this wrong?" she said suddenly. "What if the Devourers aren't evil? What if they're just doing what they were designed to do?" "Designed by whom?" asked Commander Zelkira, her 4 eyes blinking in confusion. "By the universe itself," Sean replied. "Think about it. Every system tends toward entropy, toward disorder. The Devourers are the ultimate expression of that tendency. They break down complex structures and return them to simple energy. In a way, they're just following the most basic law of physics." Dr. Lum Ori's light form flickered with sudden understanding. "You think they are a natural force, like gravity or magnetism?" "I think they're the universe's way of recycling old, stagnant systems," Chun said. "The problem is that they've become too good at their job. They're not just cleaning up entropy anymore. They're destroying everything, even systems that are still growing and changing." Songmaster Kyle Vera stepped forward, her crystal body resonating with a low hum. If that is true, then perhaps the solution is not to destroy them, but to give them a new purpose. Chun smiled. Sometimes the most profound insights came from unexpected sources. Exactly. We don't need to kill this thing. We need to teach it that there's something more interesting than destruction. And what might that be? Asked Captain Vex 9. Creation, Chun replied simply. Growth. The kind of complexity that comes from cooperation instead of consumption. The idea was so simple, it was almost ridiculous. But as Chun explained her plan, the assembled team began to understand what she was proposing. Instead of trying to destroy the facility, they would show it something it had never seen before, the power that came from building things up instead of tearing them down. It will not work, protested Dr. Park. That creature feeds on entropy and destruction. How can we convince it to choose creation instead? The same way we convinced the coalition to start fighting again, Chun replied. By showing it what's possible when different elements work together instead of against each other. She turned to address the entire team, humans and aliens together. Everyone link hands. Form a circle around the core. I know this sounds crazy, but I need you to think about everything you're fighting for. Your families, your homes, your dreams for the future. Think about all the good things that are possible when we refuse to give up. The team looked at each other with uncertainty. Humans were used to Chun's unconventional ideas, but the alien members of the group had never been asked to do something so seemingly unscientific. Trust her, said Morrison to the hesitant aliens. I've seen her pull off impossible things before. Slowly, one by one, they joined hands. Humans linked with Zephyrians, whose crystal forms adapted to create physical contact. Collective drones connected with luminary energy beings, their different natures somehow finding common ground. Songmaster Kyle Vera began to hum a low, harmonious tone that seemed to resonate with the facility itself. As the circle formed, something extraordinary began to happen. The combined will of the group, their shared determination to protect everything they loved began to manifest as a visible force. It started as a faint glow around their joined hands, but it quickly grew stronger and brighter. I can feel it, whispered Dr. Lamori, her energy form blazing with new intensity. The force that connects all living things. The power that makes us choose existence over oblivion. The dark energy core began to react to this new presence. For the first time in its existence, it was encountering something that opposed entropy, not through violence, but through the simple act of choosing to create rather than destroy. The facility's pulsing rhythm began to change, becoming less aggressive and more curious. It's working, said Dr. Park in amazement. The conversion process is slowing down. But the real miracle happened when the dark energy core began to reach out toward the circle of joined beings. Tentacles of pure darkness extended from the device, but instead of attacking, they seemed to be trying to understand what they were. Sensing. Do not fear it, Chun said softly. Let it feel what we feel. Show it that there's another way to exist. The moment the dark energy touched the circle, everything changed. The alien consciousness at the heart of the facility suddenly experienced something it had never known before. The feeling of connection, of being part of something larger than itself, without consuming or destroying that thing. Through the link, the devourer entity felt human courage and alien wisdom, the songs of crystal beings and the collective strength of hive minds choosing individual heroism. It experienced love, hope, determination, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had brought them all to this moment. For the first time in its existence, the creature understood that there was something more powerful than entropy. The force that made conscious beings choose to create meaning in a universe that seemed meaningless. The change was immediate and dramatic. The dark energy that had been draining the black hole reversed its flow, beginning to feed power back into the galactic core. The facility's structure began to shift and transform, its twisted metal reforming into something that looked almost organic. "What's happening?" asked Morrison. "It's learning," Sean replied with wonder. "It's choosing to become something new." The transformation spread throughout the facility and beyond. Devourer ships throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped their attacks, their crews experiencing the same revelation that had struck their core intelligence. Instead of continuing to consume star systems, they began to rebuild them, using their vast power to restore worlds that had been thought lost forever. "Admiral Chun," came Commander Zelkira's voice over the communication channel. "We are receiving reports from across the galaxy. The Devourer fleets have ceased all hostile action. They appear to be healing the damage they have caused." Chun smiled as she watched the facility continue its transformation. "They're not Devourers anymore. They're builders now." The entity that had once been the galaxy's greatest threat was now its greatest hope for renewal. Using the same power it had once used for destruction, it began to create new star systems, populated with worlds that could support life forms beyond anything previously imagined. But the changes were not limited to the former Devourers. Throughout the galaxy, Coalition species found that their exposure to human determination had awakened something within them that they had not known was sleeping. They began to explore new possibilities, to take risks they would never have considered before, to reach for goals that logic said were impossible. The Zephyrians created music that could literally reshape matter, using sound to build crystalline cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The collective discovered that individual choice could make their hive mind stronger rather than weaker, leading to technological breakthroughs that had seemed impossible under pure groupthink. Luminari learned to burn with new types of light, creating energy patterns that could heal damaged space-time itself. They worked with human engineers to develop technologies that seemed to violate the laws of physics, powered by nothing more than the shared belief that such things should be possible. "We have learned something important," announced High Counselor Tech Mana during the first post-war gathering of the Coalition. "Intelligence without will is useless. Logic without hope leads only to stagnation. We had become so advanced that we forgot how to grow." Admiral Chun, now promoted to the newly created position of Human Ambassador to the Coalition, stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species. "We didn't save you," she said. "We reminded you how to save yourselves." "And in doing so," replied Songmaster Kyle Vera, "you saved us all." The years that followed became known as the Great Awakening. Civilizations that had remained static for millennia began to evolve again, driven by the understanding that perfection was not a destination, but a journey. They explored new frontiers, not just in space, but in consciousness, creativity, and cooperation.